Whenever we're ready. So good morning, everybody. Today, we're at Stop Ayin Test. We're starting right at the top of the Mishnah, and I think just to let everyone know where we're going to stop. And you can see there's a few Mishnayos and Ayin Testament bays. I don't think we're going to start the second Mishnah. It's a long Mishnah that ends about halfway down on Peyam et Aleph. We'll just do it tomorrow, and then all right.
Is it Ayin Test?
Ayin Test right at the top.
Okay.
So
Tessie.
Tessie, exactly.
Yeah. I thought it would correct you.
Exactly.
Tessie.
So today is it's one of these technical dop that we're gonna have a little bit of Shabbos, a little bit of Eruvin. So it's all good stuff. So the Mishnah says, Haisa omedes al rosh hagag. Let's say she's standing on a roof, V'zarku la, and the husband who's standing, let's say, down below, he throws the get onto the roof. So imagine, he has a get and he like ties it to like a baseball or something, and he chucks a ball up to the roof. So Kavan shehigia la'avir hagag, once the get kind of clears the ear space of the roof, Harezu migareshas, she's divorced, meaning it doesn't have to land onto the floor of the roof. Once it clears something like that, a paper airplane, a ball, something, somehow he throws this thing. Once it gets into the airspace, that is good enough. What about the reverse case? Hu milamala v'hi milamato. So the husband, he's up on the roof, she's down in the chutzner, right? And the Gemara is going to get into who owns the roof, who owns the chutzner. So the Gemara is very much going to get into that, right? But he's on the top, she's on the bottom. The Zarkula, now he's throwing downward. Once it clears the airspace of the roof, then already she's divorced. Therefore, nimchak or nisraf, if somehow on the way down the get gets erased or it gets burned, never actually lands, it doesn't matter, she's still divorced. She's divorced from the moment it kind of clears the airspace. So the Gemara asks kind of an obvious question, right? If we're saying, let's focus on the first case. If she's divorced before it ever lands, don't we need Gnasan biyada? Like, don't we need her to get it, right? The halo minter, the get's not washed. What if an eagle comes and snatches it before it lands? How does this work, right? Granted, it's her roof, and that was the first mission of the barak, right? If it's her property, you can throw it into her property, but it's got to land in the chutzner, in the roof, whatever it is. How does this work if it hasn't landed yet? So Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Bigag Sheyesh Lomaka. We got to make a new kinta that this is a roof that has some sort of perimeter, it has some sort of fence, whatever it is, and therefore it's not so much that when it clears the airspace, it clears the airspace and lands at least within that perimeter, and therefore at this point we're not concerned that it can fly off or something like that. It is going to land, but the chiddush of the Mishnah is it doesn't have to actually land. So long as it's within the airspace and it's going to land, that is good enough. Ula bar Bansi Menashe, I don't know how to say his name. Menashia, Ula bar Menashia, Mishmei de Avimi Amar, Hacha bepachach mishlosha samach lagag asinan, v'chal pachach mishlosha samach lagag kegag dam. He answers a different terrace. He says, no, it's not so much that there's a perimeter. It's that when we say the airspace, we didn't mean it doesn't have to hit the ground. It doesn't literally hit the ground. Once it gets to within 3 tefachim of the ground, it is considered as if it touched the ground. This is through the medium of lavud, right, of sukkah and of eruvin fame, and therefore using the principle, the legal fiction of lavud, even if it doesn't hit the ground, it's as if it hit the ground, and that's the chiddush of this Mishnah. Okay. Hu milamala. What about the reverse case where he is up on the roof and he throws it down, right? Again, we said once it clears the airspace of the roof, then it's considered like it's already down in the chutzner. The halo minter, same question. Right, something can get snatched on the way down. Like, well, why does this work? So Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel Kigon Shahayu Mechitzos Hatzachtonos Odfos Alel Yom. So again, a picture is helpful over here, but the idea is you've got a chutzner that's surrounding this roof, and the walls of the chutzner go up very, very, very high, even higher than the roof or the walls that are by the roof, and therefore once you clear the roof, you're kind of within the perimeter of the chutzner, in those walls, and therefore we're not concerned that like a dog can come and take it, right? It's going to land in the chutzner eventually. And this was an answer that was given across all the various Amoraim. So we said this was an answer that was given. Rabbi Yehuda said this in the name of Shmuel. V'chein Amar Rabbi Elazar Amar Rabbi Oshaya. Kigon Shayim Mechitzos Hatzachtonos Odfos Alel Yonos. V'chein Amar Ula Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So 3 different Masoras, right? They all said the same answer of Kigon Shayim Mechitzos Hatzachtonos Otvos al yonos. So Amalei Rav Abba Ula. So one of the people that gave this answer was Ula in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So Rav Abba asked Ula, "Come on, Karebi, are we all saying this answer that once it clears the airspace of the roof and it's within the airspace of the chutzner, it says if it landed in the chutzner, are they all going like Rebbe? Damar Kuza Kamisha Uncha Tamya? So this takes us back to the way beginning of Shabbos. And if we recall, right, Shabbos, there's an issue of hotzah, right? So if you have something, you can't bring something from Rosh Hashanah into Rosh Hashanah into Rosh Hashanah, even 4 amos within a Rosh Hashanah. But in order to be over the malacha of hotzah, there has to be an akira and a hanacha, right? So you got to pick it up and you got to put it down. So the question is like this: what if I throw something within a Rosh Hashanah to a Rosh Hashanah, not 4 amos, probably the absolute max you can, 3.9 amos, but somehow or another there is a Rosh Hashanah in the middle. So you got to come up with a case. It's kind of hard to imagine, but this is the scenario. You're throwing something from point A to point B in Rosh Hashanah. You're not crossing 4 amos because that would be its own problem, but you are crossing a Rosh Hashanah. Do we view that as it was totally airborne and therefore there was never an akira and a hanacha? Or do we say, even while it's in the air, we kind of view it as if it's on the ground and then coming back up and on the ground and then back up? And if you view it that way, then there's akira from the Rosh Hashanah and then another hanacha in the Rosh Hashanah. That is the question. So Rebbe famously holds that kluta kamisha chadami. When something is airborne, it's as if it landed and then came back up. So Rav Abba asked Ula, this halacha of our Mishnah, where someone throws something off a roof, and once it clears the airspace of the roof and it's above the chutzner, we view it as if it's already on the chutzner. Is it all of Yishita's Rebbe who says that when something is airborne, we view it as if it's on the ground?
How high can that go? Yeah, let's say that's high.
Well,
you have a building that's
for the purposes of get, the way they're saying it is it can't be higher than the walls of the chutzner surrounding the chutzner. Because from a get perspective, we're actually going to see this a little bit. From a get perspective, the key is it guarded? Can a dog come and take it? So we definitely need to be within the walls of the perimeter of the chutzner.
like a 3-story building, you threw it next door and the chutzner is only 10 feet high.
So then it wouldn't work. It would wait until we're within the 10 feet. Yeah, exactly. So Amar Lay, he answers, Ula says back, no, afilu tamer rabbanan. You could even say we're not getting involved with this machlokas Rebbe and the Rabbanan on Hilchos Shabbos, right? You could even say that our halacha is the Rabbanan who argue with Rebbe over there. Ad kan lo Rabbanan allowed to Rebbe. The Rabbanan only argue with Rebbe in Hilchos Shabbos, Elen in Shabbos. Aval hacha. This is exactly the point we were just making. Aval hacha. When it comes to a get, mishum interview. The whole focus here is whether it is guarded, whether something can take it. And so long as the walls of the perimeter chutzner are very tall, we're not worried that something can take it. And therefore, even the Rabbanan who argue with Rebbe would agree over here with this whole airspace halacha. V'chein Amar of Asi, Amar of Yochanan. So we had 3 different Amoraim that said it in the names of whatever, and we have a 4th. This is Rav Asi saying it also in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. The case over here is where the walls of the chutzner were taller than the gag. So you have the same exchange. Amar le Rav Zera le Rav Asi. So who said this halacha? This was Rav Asi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So now Rav Zera is asking on Rav Asi, come on, Karevi, are you saying your halacha in the shita of Rebbe, the Amar Kuzak Misha Uncha Damya by Shabbos? Amar Lay. No, he said Afilu Tamer Rabbanan. Ad kan lo pligi Rabbanan allowed the Rebbe Ela in Shabbos. That's Dafka halacha by Shabbos. Aval hacha mishum interihu v'hakam inter. Fine. So again, very very wordy, but ultimately kind of saying the same thing multiple times. So the next halacha in the Mishnah was that if the husband is on the roof and he's throwing the get downwards, once it clears the airspace, whatever that means, right, of the chutzner, it's considered a get. And therefore, even if the get was erased or the get was burned or something like that, and it never hits the ground,
Right.
it's still considered a good get. So the Gemara says, Amar of Nachman, Amar Rav bar Avua, Lo Shanu Elishin Nimchak Derech Yeridus. Now we're really getting technical. Imagine again, our picture is very, very helpful here, right? Imagine a scenario. So, you've got a picture. Very good. So you don't have a picture. Alan's doing his best. So the point is, even though we say once it hits the airspace of the chutzner, it's not. If the husband, if you think about it, he's got to throw a get. It's got to clear the roof of this gag, and then it's got to go down into the chutzner. So let's assume the walls of the chutzner are much taller. So if he throws the get, or he throws the paper airplane, and it's on the way up, even if it's cleared the airspace of the gag and it's within the walls of the chutzner, that doesn't count. That's not considered like it's going to land. We need to wait till it comes back down. And then even if it doesn't hit the ground, but it's just on the way down and it's within the walls, that's when this halacha would apply.
It's goaltending by basketball.
Exactly. Yeah, very good. That's a good analogy. Yeah, it's golden. So Ela shenimcha derech irida. Aval nimcha derech aliyah, but if it got erased for somehow on the way up with an upward trajectory low, my timer, because meikara lo lemenafkai. Again, it's a very difficult svara to understand. For some reason, again, this is all benasan biyadai. You have to put it in her hand, and even though while it's on the way up, it is eventually going to land. For some reason, that's not considered enough. We need to wait for it to be on a downward.
Gravity.
What?
Going up, the gravity is pulling it away from where you're trying to go.
All right. Yeah, I sure.
So the point is, even if the trajectory is at a land, you have to hunter for it to be hot.
No, it has to hit the airspace of the chutzner in a downward motion. Because if it's in an upward motion, even in the chutzner, that still doesn't count. It needs to make its way, needs to make its descent on the way down.
Well, because it wants to know that it's actually land in the hunter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So nisraf. So what? So that was the case of nimchak. What about nisraf? So let's say it's never going to hit the ground because it's going to burn on the way down. Amar of Nachman, Amar Rav Baravua, Lo shanu el shakadam get lideleka. There can't be this existing massive fire. It has to be the get was thrown, and somehow within the 10 seconds it took, a fire broke out, and it never right. And this is what? Sorry, like a yeah. This is very similar, if you recall, from the very end of yesterday's doc, where we say even if we're going to say the get is chal before it hit the ground, it had to have the ability to hit the ground. If there was a huge fire, or in yesterday's topic, I was standing on the ledge right by an ocean or something, and it was never going to hit the ground, that's not going to count. So he's up there on the roof. No, it's her chutzner. She doesn't have to be down there. Yeah, she's not standing in a fire.
No, but I said she doesn't want to get bored. She was aiming the flamethrower.
Exactly. Yeah.
You may have mentioned this.
Yeah. Either way. So avokadma deleka leget. If the fire came first, lo my time because meikara let's rate azla. Because even okay. So sorry, you were saying something
With a bird, what happens if you throw it and then it hits the chutzner and then the bird that comes out of nowhere?
So that for sure is once it hits the chutzner, hits the airspace of the chutzner, that's totally fine. Yeah, once she gets the get or halachic purposes, then we don't really care what happens after that.
That's only if like the fire.
Yeah.
Determined plan.
So thankfully, we are turning our attention away from the goofy cases to other goofy cases. So Amar of Chizda, Rishuyos Chalukos begin. So this is a different halacha. Rashi says because we're going to prove something from the Mishnah, that's why it's here. But Chizda says the halacha, and he says again, a husband owns a house, he owns the chutzner, he owns the gag, he owns the carpet, he owns all this stuff, right? He's allowed to lend the use of the chutzner to his wife for purposes of getting divorced. So he says to a shliach, you know, here's the get. I want you to give it to my wife, and I want. For this purpose, my chutzner, she can use the chutzner, and the wife then, makes a point to shliach lakabala, and they can use the chutzner to accept this get or whatever it is, right?
This is a din and getting it.
But he's saying like this: if the husband specifically gives the instruction to the shliach or whatever it is that I want my wife to have use of my chutzner, he can't say. Well, he said the chutzner. I mean, the roof's probably the chutzner, right? It's all kind of the same. No, chutzner means chutzers, right? People are makbid. If I say chutzner, I don't mean my roof. If I say my roof, I don't mean my house. I don't mean my. So whatever I say, that's what I mean. That's where Chizah says reshuyos are chalukos specifically by gittin.
Special din and getting.
It's a special din and gittin for some reason. So Amarle Rami Bar Chama LeRava. So Rami Bar Chama says to Rava. Interestingly, Rami Bar Chama and Rava happen to be brother-in-laws. And who was their father-in-law? Rav Chizda. So Rav Chizda says it's halacha, and the two of them are talking, and they're saying Manale l'Sabaha. How does Saba, meaning Rav Chizda, their father-in-law, right? How does he know this halacha? So Amarle, so Rava said back to Rami Bar Chama, Masnisani. It's a Mishnah. Which Mishnah? This is our Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, Haisa Omedet al Rosh Hagag. If she was on the roof, Vizarkula, and then he throws it up on the roof. So once it clears the airspace, she's divorced. So B'mayatkina. This is really the question as you asked right when we did the Mishnah. Who owns what property here? Ilema begag dida the chutzner dida. If she owns the gag and the chutzner, lamali avir gag. You could just drop it on the chutzner. Why doesn't he throw it onto the roof for it? So Ella begag dide the chutzner dide. Maybe it's his gag and it's his chutzner. Then kigia lavir gag. My hobby. Same idea. If none of it's hers, then why do we care where it goes? It's all his.
It's all her.
Ella.
Shirts.
Exactly. He could just drop it. He doesn't need
It's not going into her shirts.
Well, it's already in her shirt.
Right. And it's not like him getting it to her.
Well,
It has to go from his rishus into her.
Well,
rishus.
he's holding it, so it's his rishus. You could just drop it. The Ella Pshita, so the first case has to be Begag Dida, the Chatzar Dide. It's got to be her roof and his, which is Pasha, the way we were kind of learning the Mishnah, right? But then Ema Sefa. What about the reverse case in the Sefa? Humalama, Lavihima Lamata, Vizarkula, Kevin Johnson Mashasagad, Nimchako Nishra, Harezu Migaresha. So the reverse is he's up there and she's down on the ground, or at least it's her Chatzar. Now, the E Begag Dide, the Chatzar Dide, and if we're going to say, what? The Ibegag, Dida, the Chasr Dide, like the way we learned the Resha, so then Amai Migareshes. Again, it's kind of the reverse, right? If it's her roof and he's the one standing up there, he should just drop it. Why is he throwing it down in the Chatzar? Ella Begag Dide, the Chasr Dida. So you got to say it's the reverse. But the Gemara says Resha Begag Dida, the Chasr Dide, Seifa Begag Dide, the Chatzar Dida. That doesn't make sense. Why would the cases be like that? You'd like there to be consistent cases. Ella Lab. You should really say that everything belongs to him. To Oshla Makom, Dechad Makom mostly Inchi, Trey Makomos Lo mostly Inchi. So rather, it makes more sense to say that the husband owns both of them. And in the first case, he's lending her this spot. And in the second case, he's lending her that spot. And the Chiddush of the Mishnah is,
Wherever she is.
that's where but the Chiddush is that he only lends one spot. So he's not like, if he lends her the roof, then this halacha is going to work if you throw it to the roof. If you lend her the Chatzar, then it's only going to work if you throw it into the Chatzar. So that's what Rava is saying to Rav Chama. That must be shot in our Mishnah. And that's how Rav Chizda knew that when a husband lends space, specifically by Gittin, he means what he says. And if he says the Chatzar, he means the Chatzar. If he says the roof, he means the roof. But Amar Lay, but I guess Rav Chama was not impressed with this. And he said, I mean, meaty area. I mean, like who said? Maybe Dilma, Hakis of Hakadisa, Reisha, Begag Dida, V'Chatzar Dide, and Seifa, Begag Dide, V'Chatzar Dida. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll show you the Reisha was this case and Seifa was this case. That's how we learned the Mishnah. So Rav Chama was not impressed with that rye. But either way, we move on. So Amar Rava, Shalosh Midos Begittin. There are three specific characteristics by Gittin, and the way Rashi explains, and we'll see the Hamshach of the Gemara, there's three halachas that are specific to Gittin that are not like this in other areas of halacha. So the first one is Hada Amar Rebbe Kluta Kimi Shahuncha Upliga Rabbanan Allah. So we already talked about this. This is the halacha that when you throw something from Rosh Hashanah and it lands in a Rosh Hashanah, but it kind of crossed over Rosh Hashanah in the middle. Rebbe's halacha is that when something is airborne, it's as if it's on the ground. Hani Mili le'inyan Shabbos. This whole machlokas, Rebbe and the Rabbanan, is dafka le'inyan Shabbos. When it comes to a get, Mishum and Turehu v'haminter, as we spoke out earlier, everyone's going to kind of agree that once something hits the proper airspace, it's as if it's on the ground, assuming it's being guarded, and therefore, a dog can't come and get it or whatever it is. So that was halacha number one. Halacha number two is Vada Amar of Chizda, that not kana rishus hayachid v'rosho traskal. So imagine you're standing in a rishus harabim, and then in a rishus hayachid, someone has a pole, and they put some sort of tray atop of the pole. And we're playing some awful form of basketball where you gotta throw something out of the tray, but it doesn't fall. You gotta go get it. So the point is, you threw something from rishus harabim, it landed in a rishus hayachid on this tray on top of a pole, but the halacha for Shabbos is Vizarak v'nachal gabav afilu gavoa mea ama. The halacha in Shabbos is even if that pole or that tray was 100 amos tall, if you throw from Rosh Hashanah and it lands onto the Rosh Hashanah, you are a chayiv for otzah, chayiv fisher Hashanah ola ad rekia, because there is no limit to how high a Rosh Hashanah is. In contrast, a Rosh Hashanah only goes about 10 tefachim high. If you throw something above 10 tefachim within Rosh Hashanah, it's already a makom tour. That's not the case by Rosh Hashanah. By Rosh Hashanah, it goes ad rekia. So if you're standing in Rosh Hashanah, you throw something onto Rosh Hashanah and it lands, even if it lands really, really, really high up, you're still high for hotzah. Because again, Rosh Hashanah goes ola ad rekia. But that's dafka din. The Gemara says, Hani mili le'inyan Shabbos. When it comes to a get, mishum in turehu v'halominter. So if you were going to throw a get,
It has to go down.
exactly, it has to go down. So if you were going to throw a get and it lands in her rishus, but it lands really, really, really high up on a tray, on a pole, and she can't get to it, and a bird can come get it, she's not considered divorced, because the point is v'nasan b'yada. You got to give it to her in a way where it's guarded, in a way where it's a chatzar mishmeres, whatever it is. So even if it's in her rishus, but if it's really high up, that is not going to count for gittin. And the third halacha that is specific to a get, not other halachas, is V'hada Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. This is a halacha in Eruv, right? So we know by Shabbos the basic concept of an Eruv, right? So if I've got something in my rishus, I can't necessarily bring it to your rishus unless we've got an Erev, right? So Had Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel Lo Yamod Adam Begag Zev Yeklot Meit Shamim Migago Shel Chavero Shekashem Shet Yorin Chalukim Elamata Kach Yorin Chalukim Elamala. So just like we have this concept of an Erev by sharing chutzers or houses, so too on the roof. If you've got something on your roof, I can't go from my roof and go to your roof and take it back to my roof. Same idea, right? To the same way that chutzers are separate people have separate chutzers down below, separate people have separate roofs up above. Without an Erev, we can't share stuff even on our rooftops. But Hani Milul in Shabbos, that is Gufa halacha when it comes to Shabbos. Aval in get, when it comes to this halacha of a get, Mishum Kipeidehu, the Kulihai Lokapti Inche. What we mean to say is this halacha that we said in Amud Aleph, that Rav Chisda says that when a husband gives use of his chutzner for a get, he means specifically a chutzner and not a gag and not a bias. That is not the case when it comes to a gag. If a husband says that my wife can have use of a gag, right? Like the husband has, let's say, two different gags, and he says, I want to give use of gag A to my wife. They can also use gag B. A person isn't so makbid when it comes to his own gag, specifically this roof as opposed to that roof. So again, the fact that we view roofs as separate, that's a concept in Shabbos, that's a concept in Hotzah, in Erev, stuff like that.
We consider all the gagging of the city as one rishus, don't we? Doesn't the issue like that?
Well, I think it's for Shimon specifically. Yeah, all gagos and karpipos.
Thank you, Kurt, when they talk about the Mila, remember the Mashiri Mila, when they had to bring this.
Yeah. But so I think Rabbi Eliezer specifically says that you can just do anything for a bris, right? All machshire, but I think Rosh Shimon specifically, it says all gagos and karpipos and whatever. Yeah. So the point is here, when it comes to a get, even if the husband says that you can use my gag A to for space for a get, we can also, and Rav Chisda might disagree, but the point is here, we're saying he's not makbid, and you can even use gag B. Again, the fact that we view gag A and gag B as separate, Hilchah Shabbos, everyone agrees. You need an Erev to carry from gag A to gag B. Again, assuming gag A and gag B are owned by different people. But when it comes to get, we're not as makbid. We kind of treat them as the same. And therefore, if a husband says you can use A, you can also use B. Okay. Amar Abai. All right, and we're going to get a few more goofy Shabbos Eruvin style cases, and then we move on. So Amar Abai, Shtei Chatzeros Zu L'Pnim Mizu. Let's say you've got two Chatzeros. One is within the other. Again, pictures are helpful here. Pnimis Shela, the inner Chatzer, right, belongs to her, and the Chitzona Shelo, the outer Chatzer belongs to him. Umechitzos hachitzonos otbos ala pnimios. And again, the mechitzos of the outer one are much taller than the mechitzos of the inner one. Vizarkula, and he's standing in the outer one, and he's throwing the get from his into her. Kevan shehigia la'avir mechitzos hachitzona harezu migureshes. So once the get kind of clears the ear space of the inner chutzner, even though it's not within the walls of the inner chutzner, right? It's just in the ear space. So long as it's at least within the walls of the outer chutzner, that already counts. My time up. Because panimis gupa b'mechitzot hachitzona commensurate. Because again, the focus here is this mishameres, and so long as it's within the perimeter of the outer chutzner's walls, we consider that watched, or it's mishameres. Therefore, as long as it's within the ear space of the inner chutzner, even if it's not within the walls of the inner chutzner, right? But it's within the ear space of it, that already is okay. Masha ain't kain bekubos, but Abaye says this is not the halacha. If we were, instead of talking about chatzeros, we were talking about kupos. We were talking about boxes. What do we mean? So shtei kupos zu besokzu. So imagine you've got one box within another box. Pnimis, the inner box shala, belongs to her. Chitzona shalo, the outer box belongs to him. Vizarku la, and he throws something into the inner box. Afilu higia la'avir pnimis, even if it's within the airspace of the inner box, ena migureshes. It's not going to be migreshes. It's got to land in the box. My time. What's the difference between the boxes and the chutzner? To halonach, because it hasn't landed. Now that's not very helpful. But the way Rashi explains, because again, nothing has ever landed this entire day. Everything we're always talking about ear space. Yeah. But the way Rashi explains the difference between boxes and chutzers is when it comes to a box. What's the purpose of a box? To carry something. Right? So something needs to be in a box for the box to be useful. It needs to be literally be in the box so I can pick up the box and move away. A chutzner is not like that. A chutzner, the purpose of being something in a chutzner is that it guards from the outside. So as long as you're within the walls of the chutzner, even if you're not literally on the ground of the chutzner, a dog can come and get it, right? Someone can steal it, whatever it is. But a box, it needs to be in the box, right? Because if it's not in the box is useless, right? The box doesn't help you if it's only in the airspace of the box. So that's how Rashi explains the difference between boxes and chatzeros. So the Gemara has a very technical question that, if yesterday's daf we're very, very familiar with. Remember, we're talking about her box within his box. So v'chinach, even when the get lands, my hobby, kelav shelo keach b'rishus mocherhu, right? This is her box, but it's within his box, and that means it's her kalim inside his kalim. This is a huge machlokas about a basra. Does that work? Does that not work? So one last ukimta for the day. You're going to have to say that the outer box doesn't have a bottom. So we're not literally, her box is not in his box, it's just surrounded by the walls of his box. So-
Not a very useful box.
Not a very useful box, his box.
Yeah,
It's
no,
just,
that's what their head. That's a-
It's what do you say?
That's what they used to wear on their head. It had kind of- They used to wear, carry stuff on their head.
Oh, very good.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right, please do. All right, very good. One last Mishnah Gemara is very quick, and then we'll pick it up tomorrow. So the next Mishnah, Beis Shammai Omrim, this has to do with get yashan, which came up a few days ago. So Beis Shammai Omrim, Poter Adam Ishto beget yashan, Beis Hillel Osrin. Beis Shammai permits the use of a get yashan, and Beis Hillel says it's asr. Be'ezu get yashan. So what is this get yashan? Kolson is yached ima me'achar shekas b'lah. So we'll give this example, right? Imagine it's January 1st, and a man goes to a sofer and he says, "Please write a get for my wife." The sofer is going to write on the get. Today is January 1st, or probably the Hebrew date, but today is January 1st. And this man, he's writing a lishma, this man, this woman, they're going to get divorced. Now they go to therapy and they're trying to work it out. And he's got the get in a drawer. Sure enough, everything doesn't work out. And September 1st, he actually gives her the get. But in the meantime, they live together from January 1st to September 1st. And what if she gets pregnant in the meantime? So now she's going to have a baby. Baby's perfectly fine. They were married. Right? But imagine 2-3 years later,
Right.
someone's going to see the get hanging on the wall like a ksuba, and they're going to say, wait a second, you were divorced January 1, 3 years ago, and you have a 2.5-year-old son. Like when was he born? Right? So what's going on over here? So they're going to assume, now again, it's not like he's a mom's. She's just a pnuya, right? So maybe there's some sort of gam or whatever it is. So Beis Hillel is nervous about this. Beis Shammai is not as nervous about this. So the Gemara says, what are they arguing about? It's literally what we just spoke out. We'll just read it inside. Beis Shammai, Savri, Lo Amrinan, Gzera Sham Yomer, Gita Kodem Livna. He's just not concerned that people are going to remember or whatever it is. They're going to remember when they got divorced. It's not going to be on the wall, whatever it is. People, he's not concerned about this. Beis Hillel, Savri, Amrinan, Gzera Sham Yomer, Gita Kodem Livna. And therefore he is concerned. But Amar of Abba, Amar Shmuel, Im Nises Lo Tetze. Notwithstanding the fact that we generally possible like this, well, and therefore we would not allow a get like this. Should she get remarried, we're not going to make a big deal about it. We're not going to make her divorce because of the bad get, and we do it. If she's married already, it's okay. Ika da Amri Amar Baba Amar Shmuel, even more makel. Imnis Garsha Tinasa Lechapila. Once she gets divorced, then we kind of let it go. I mean, she shouldn't do it. Rashi is very interesting. One last thing Rashi says, if you look at Rashi, he says, in this Garsha, they got Yashan, Bahalach Baila Lemedina Sayam. So Rashi's mashma, it's not just if they're divorced, it's if they're divorced and it's like a pain to redo it. Like the husband's gone. So ideally, as long as everyone's around, let's just redo it. If there's some issue, we're not going to make a big deal about it and we'll let them go off on their merry way.
One of the